Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Playing some computer love this morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Morning Glow. Welcome to another episode of The Morning Glow. Got a great broadcast lineup for you this morning. We got my brother from another mother, but we got the same father on with us this morning. My name is Raheem Alchemy, and this is Sir Leonard. Good morning, sir.
How you doing, Raheem?
Hey, doing good, man. Yourself?
All right.
Good
Can't
deal,
complain.
good deal.
Come on.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Leonard, what y'all what you say? What you say, Leonard?
I just told Anna good morning.
Good morning, Leonard.
Okay. We had to mute Leonard line. Leonard got a fancy thing going on his line over there. He give us a little echo sound, but we're gonna figure it out over the weekend. Me and Leonard gonna have a conference. we're gonna do us a conference. But Anna, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. Sorry it took a few seconds to get on air. I was making some of my great Kona coffee, Hawaiian coffee to start my day. Somebody tried it out. I think somebody didn't like it too much.
Man, that coffee is killer. That coffee is a killer.
Leonard, you should try it sometime whenever all this social distancing goes away.
Leonard, don't do it, Leonard.
Try it out. Everything's worth a try at least once, except escargot.
I'm gonna tell you something. It's not. Don't do it, Leonard. But y'all know this is Black Friday. This is Black Friday, and we were actually waiting on Tawana. She should be here with us in a little bit. She'll be coming in. Unfortunately, he won't be with us this morning. He actually have a prior engagement he have to take care of today, so he won't be with us today. But he'll certainly be back on with us Monday. This being Black Friday, we're talking about business. Let me go to Anna. Anna, what's on your mind concerning business before we get this thing started? Talk to me about business and what does business mean to you?
So that's funny that you say that. Since I've been home and I've been doing, I guess, practicing social distancing. So there's like some ideas I've been writing. I've been reading 2 books. And if I get busy, as you know, all of us do throughout the day, I also got it on the Audible Kindle. I think it's Audible Kindle through Amazon. Anyhow, so I've been practicing that because I have a business and I want to so badly tell you guys, but I got to wait because I want it all to unfold. And when it's like there, I want to tell you guys, bang, that's what I was telling you all about that I was in the process of doing. So anyhow, it's a future plan that I have. I hope to see each and every one of you guys there, especially the Morning Glow family. You guys have like a extra huge spot in my heart. I love you guys dearly. I really do. And I'm not just saying that. So
all right, don't you start crying now. Don't you start crying.
No, I'm not going to cry today. I'm really, Leonard, you missed it. I was like a bucket of tears yesterday. It was horrible. I was in my feelings. And then after I got off air, I was in my feelings too. I just kept crying. So business, small business especially, it's a great thing. You know what? And something gave me confirmation. I read something that said, or I saw something that said, do it before you die. At least you could say, it's better to say I failed at it than, you know, I didn't even give it a shot, you know, and then you're in your deathbed and you're like, I didn't even try. So try, you know what? And if you failed, you can say, what? I failed at it, but I still tried. So just do that.
Exactly. We have a guest with us. I don't know if she's still there. Hold on, let me see. She should be back on with us in just 1 second. Leonard, what do you say about business?
Say that again.
What do you say about business? You know, this is Black Friday. We're talking about business today. What's on your mind about business?
Well, it's different to watch how businesses will recover and how businesses learn to rebound from such an event. Because I'm not sure. It looks like, you know, your smaller business are going to suffer the most. Because a lot of times when I say a lot of people don't get it, understand. If you 2 or 3 people you ain't nowhere near the definition of small business.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason you may be going through tough times, there's some people that have to model their business a different way. There are some people who finally will learn the benefits of an online business.
Mm-hmm.
You know how some people may say, "Well, I'm not online," or blah blah blah. One thing you've learned recently is that a virtual presence is very important. And now, if you did not have a actual virtual presence, hopefully, a lot of small business would have taken the time to improve that part of their business during this time,
Mm-hmm.
so they can begin to reach other customers, maybe try different marketing strategies. I think like Tawanda's always talking about how more efficient it is for her to do business in a virtual environment.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing. Like, say, for instance, the delivery of public education, which is not small business. However, the delivery of education, if you notice, there are everything fits together. President Obama was really pushing for everyone to have some access to the internet, especially children who went to schools in rural areas and things like that. There was a big push that all children should have access to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And then this thing happens and it shows that, one, what if you had to get all of your resources from the internet? There
Mm-hmm.
are still homes that don't have it. And there are also still children who may not have these various devices. There are some children that are staying in touch with school strictly through their cell phone right now.
Mm-hmm.
For especially if they don't have laptops and things like that. So I know education is going to look different, I think, after this. Because most people who never used to would consider like homeschooling was getting ready to was really taking off.
Mm-hmm.
Now people are getting an opportunity to see if they can homeschool and how to form that bond with their like state education departments and things like that. I know a lot of students, like my son, for instance, his teachers are usually online 1 hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids can get in those discussion groups and things like that to stay connected with their class and even submit their work.
That's good. That's good. And it's amazing that that you started talking about education, because we have Christy. I see that you're there, Christy. Are you frozen? Christy, undo something with your line there. It looks as though you're frozen. But we have, I think this is a young lady. Somebody just called in, and I want to make sure that I have it right. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Good morning. This is Dr. Spear calling from Huntsville.
Dr. Spear, how you doing this morning, young lady?
Good morning.
Good deal. Great having you, and thank you for calling in. We definitely appreciate you. And it's amazing. This is Black Friday, and we're talking about business. And Leonard, he reached right into our head and poured out what we're going to do, because we have you on with us today, and your expertise is education. And I got in contact with you last night. Good morning, Sherry. I got in contact with you last night, and I invited you to come out, and you so graciously agreed to come on. What we want to talk about today is education, the pros and the cons. Why should someone go into education? Do we need more or even better teachers to come into the educational system? And let's talk a little bit during the course of the conversation on men in education. Are they needed? So, Dr. Spear, I'm gonna yield to you just for a second, and tell me, and you can start where you want to start. Tell me what is on your heart concerning some of the things that we spoke about.
Well, clearly education is changing because as a result of what's going on now, and it's trending much more towards online education. So there is a need for a new type of education, which we have not seen before. We've seen it on a broad scale, and it's especially at a younger age. So I do see that there is a change in education from the old school to what we're doing now, which is blended learning.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're looking at right now, and maybe looking at it now for the next several months or even longer.
Okay,
A blended learning format, and that's what we're experiencing now.
Okay. Well, Dr. Spears, let me ask you this question for the people that may not know or be aware of what that means. What exactly is blended learning?
Blended learning is using more than one medium to exchange knowledge, whether it means using video education in combination with online assignments. It's using more than one format. So the first format could be reading and learning and learning for just reading, and then or learning from using videos. But the other portion might be an online class where you have video exchange, where you see the teacher and she's talking to you through a distance learning type format.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
So it would be like a live conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So those are different elements, and it's just using different learning formats and learning styles to exchange knowledge.
Okay. Now let's catapult into, and we have Christy. Good morning, Christy. Let's catapult into men in education. Men, how important is it that we have men in the classroom to give an example to the children? Is that important, or women are doing a fantastic job? We're certainly not going to take away from anything that they're doing, but are men important in the classroom as well?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. They provide a level of structure and demonstration that that's necessary for that child. Whether the child is male or female, the teacher being male does make a huge difference. I haven't got the latest data in front of me. I'm at a disadvantage on that one, but I would say from my experience and from previous research, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That role model, that male role model, is extremely important for all of our children.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. We got several other people here that I'm sure want to ask you questions as well. But why are people steering away from actually going into education today? For one time, it was flooded, and it had so many people that went into it, and they wanted to be teachers, wanted to be educators. But I don't necessarily see the same, or am I missing something? But it don't seem as though I'm seeing the same thing now.
Oh, wow, that's a great question. The trend in the workforce, that's my area.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, the trend in the workforce towards education has lapsed because of the fact that the compensation has been one of the major issues, but also there was a challenge when it came down to discipline and the challenges within the classroom, because the students are not always disciplined. So discipline became a great issue. There are several reasons why people do not go into education, but I would think they cite mainly, of course, compensation being, subpar in regards to other industries, and then also the fact that it is it's taxing mentally and emotionally because of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the students lack discipline.
Anna had a guest on her show Wednesday, and the gentleman is running for a state representative in Detroit, Michigan, and he's an ex-educator. And she asked him a couple of questions. I want to pose one or two of them to you. The pay for teachers. A lot of times people say, well, you only work 9 months a year or whatever, but they don't understand. As I said, again, my wife is an educator. I think I told you that last night. And I see that she gets up like 5 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes her head may hit the pillow 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and she's working that whole time. Most jobs don't work that long and that hard, and the level of dedication that you have to have in order to be a teacher and an effective teacher. You have to put that time in. So what do you say to that? People saying that, they only work 9 months and so they don't deserve a raise because they don't work the whole year. What do you say to that? How do you put that to rest?
Oh my, education never stops. And you said it correctly. Education does not stop, and the medium by which you exchange that education doesn't stop. Teachers are always looking for new ways to make sure that students learn.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people understand teaching is one aspect, but learning is the other.
Mm-hmm.
That is the indication of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So if the children are not learning, teachers are trying to find different mediums or different ways to exchange the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So it may take a little longer to exchange that knowledge. Maybe you would allow 1 day. You've got 2 days. There's something called a pacing guide. Many K-12 educators know about a pacing guide. So they only give you so much time to exchange so much information. And so if you don't get it right the first time, you've got to figure out another way to do it the next time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all based on the type of student that you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always a challenge. It's never it's not, you're not repeating it constantly. You're trying to find different ways to get through to your students.
Absolutely.
And so that could take that could take a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I know, and I'm going to go to the panel because I'm sure they have some questions for you as well. But I know the amount of love that one have to have for their students in order to make sure that they put forth their best effort. And teachers wear so many different hats. They're educators, they're social workers, they're the police officers. There's so much in that classroom, so many different hats, and they have to change with each one of the students based upon that student's experiences and what they're bringing to the classroom. So how do you say, what would you say to someone that say, I just want to go, I just want to teach. I just want to teach. I just want to go in, I just want to teach. Is education the right field for them?
Well, now I don't understand exactly what you're asking.
Well, because of the fact that teacher wears so many different hats, because of the fact that teacher have to be the counselor, they have to be the social.
Oh yes, it can be frustrating.
Yeah,
it's quite frustrating. Yeah.
And so
it's very mentally taxing.
Exactly. So for one to say, I just want to teach, I don't want to do all those other things. I don't want to be the social worker. I don't want to be the police. I just want to teach. Is education the right field for them? Because reality is they have to wear all those hats.
That is true. Because the exchange of knowledge is really that's our ultimate goal. Teaching is one thing, but remember, learning is the evidence of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So then if there's no learning, there was just no teaching.
Mm-hmm. Good deal.
So you have to have them both.
Exactly. Leonard, what's on your heart, brother?
Well, I was just listening. One of the things about education, like she just mentioned, teaching is one thing, learning is the other part. My background is education, but I never got into education to actually teach and to be a classroom teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And the degree in leadership, K through 12, I can tell you, is completely different than dealing with it on the higher education level. I would, of course, the end game is to teach on the university level and just write books or what have you. But I think a different approach to teaching K through 12 is what people should really think about before they get into the profession. One of the main reasons why I did not choose to actually be a classroom teacher is due to a lot of the bureaucracy involved, as well as knowing what teachers have to go through. That child development piece is huge. And then when you're dealing in a system where, especially in public education school systems, just a teaching degree is not going to do it. So there's going to have to be a lot more push towards teachers as it relates to that child development piece, especially if you don't plan on giving them other staff resources. First of all, you can't expect a teacher to be a social worker. It's
Mm-hmm.
not the teacher's background.
Mm-hmm.
The teacher, just because a person is a teacher, is it automatically mean that they also should be a social worker as well and a psychologist and be responsible for teaching at least a lot of times a minimum of 25 children,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you do not have the government component supporting you.
Mm-hmm.
People would be surprised to realize what teachers are tasked with each and every day. There are some teachers in some areas who spend the majority of their time making sure children have eaten in the morning, have supplies, sometimes they're combing hair, all types of things, just to support children from various homes and backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure now if there is a child development piece in the teaching curriculum, but something is going to have to change. I know a lot of things are going to change, as you mentioned before, with the delivery of education through these formats.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge component as it relates to alternative education, because usually when kids, for some having dealing with that population of kids that usually for some reason can't go to a traditional public school for what maybe it's behavior reasons. So, especially working with African American males in education, they wind up having to go to what we call an alternative school. Some of these alternative schools, their main delivery mode is a child goes and sits in front of a computer in another building away from other students. And that is how they get their education. And if they need assistance, a lot of times there's a person there to guide them. But this is going to be a big game changer when I think when it comes to homeschooling of children, specifically those children who have disciplinary problems.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the main reasons. A lot of people will tell you, well, I'm dissatisfied with the education that my child is getting. That's usually not why a lot of African Americans are choosing homeschool. African Americans are usually choosing homeschool usually because for some reason their child has behavioral issues.
Mm-hmm.
So they take the child out of the traditional public school and then they say, okay, I'm going to homeschool the child, not realizing that it's more to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more to it than just sitting in front of a computer, because now you become the guider
Mm-hmm.
for the child.
Good
Now
day.
you're the one that has to step in. You can't just sit your child in front of a computer like you just send them to school.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. Let me go to Dr. Spears. What do you say to that?
Well, I say that he's made a very good point. Very, very good point. It is a different format, and our students are not totally used to it. The
Mm-hmm.
type of format of educational delivery. But when it comes down to homeschool, um, there are various reasons why parents pull their students out of school to homeschool. Um, and they vary from behavior, but also they vary from cultural influences from the various children that are there.
Mm-hmm.
That's another reason why people pull children out of schools. Other reasons are quite a few. They have to do with the level of education that the child can receive based on the classroom mix. Parents are losing confidence in the level of instruction that is going on in the classroom at the public education sector. So they may pull their students out. But whatever the reason that parents pull children out, there still needs to be that exchange of knowledge. So the parents are learning that it's not as easy as it may seem.
Mm-hmm.
You have the material, you might have the curriculum, you might have the material, but it is a real art to being a teacher. And you
Mm-hmm.
just, some
Yes, it
parents say,
is.
well, I don't like the influences of the classroom or the culture of the children, so I am going to pull my child out.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't blame them because the cultural influences can be negative or they can be positive.
Mm-hmm.
So for various reasons, they pull them out and then they attempt to teach them. Now we have some success stories, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmingly, you have parents who are trying to learn how to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's necessary to create that community, a community of people who have the gift of teaching and it is a gift, by the way, the gift of
Mm-hmm.
teaching in various styles so that the child can learn. Remember, education does not occur unless there's teaching and learning.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that,
My wife, she's actually an assistant principal now, but when she was in the classroom, one of her things that she used to trouble her a lot is the child coming to school Monday, and she worked the whole week to try to get the child on an even playing field, if you will, and try to get the child attitude and the way that they respond to other
mhm.
people a certain way. And come Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, he or she is there, but then Friday, she have the fear that when he go home over the weekend, everything that she's done is going to be erased. I say that, how important is it, and Anna, coming to you next, how important is it that the school as well as the home work collectively hand in glove to make sure that that child is going in the right direction?
It's extremely important that parents be on the same level and understand what process your student is going through. Whatever that exchange is, there needs to be a great communication line between the parent and the teacher.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. Anna, what's on your heart?
Wow, there's a lot. It's funny that this is the topic today because last night I got an email, as most of you know, I pulled my children out of the public school system just because I wasn't getting cooperation with a high schooler. My problem was actually educators not doing their part and not putting those grades in. It got to the point where I was actually having my older of the two youngest take pictures, and even though I came with all this proof, she just would not and refused to do any work or refused to be held accountable by her boss. So I went over her head and still turned in the grades, still got in the paperwork or whatever. But the point of the matter is that even with my other child whom is special needs, it was really hard for him being at in a regular school system. So they just had to go to a smaller group setting, which has worked wonders for them. But now, although they're home, which really makes me think twice about this decision I've made, they still have to pay full price for school. And I just got this alert last night for school, although there's this whole pandemic going on. So, and they've been doing fine. No teacher, all they're doing is sending home schoolwork. They've been doing just fine doing the work. So those are things that it makes you think twice. Now, I'm not speaking for every school, every teacher who's in the public school system, because there are some of the most incredible teachers I have met that still to this day are in contact with me and have taught the children in the past. They're here and they're still available. And if the kids need them, they're still willing to go that extra mile. But some of these teachers, I just feel, and I may be wrong, like it's just about a check. The true love is not there. Like it's like they've lost it somewhere. I don't know if it was one of these pressures. I'm a teacher, so you got to be a teacher by their parents, or I'm just doing it to have a degree, or what the case may be. But you have some teachers who have a total different personality. And my question is, and it's Dr. Who, I'm sorry, because my signal's going in and out.
Dr. Deborah Spears.
Spears. Dr. Spears, I mean, what do you do in those circumstances where you have those teachers that just, they don't care, and let the reality be that there are some of those teachers. This is the facts. What do we do in those cases, not only as parents but as other educators? Because like I said, it's not every single educator. There are some of the best, most loving teachers I have met, and they're young, that still look for my children and have found me through social media to make sure they still had a connection with the kids. What can be done to change that within teachers? Other educators, I guess.
Dr. Spears?
Wow, that's that's a powerful question there. I'll say that many teachers experience burnout, and burnout is a real thing. I want people to know that's a real thing.
Dr. Spears, let me say that. Let me say that because, and to your point, and I want people to understand this and look at it from this angle. Every profession, everybody in whatever you do, there's a period in a time where you're not always at your best, and we can't hold teachers to a higher standard that we're going to hold everybody else, because they're human as well. They're absolutely human as well, and as human, they go through certain things. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Spears.
Well, yeah, what I am hearing sounds like a teacher burnout, or there's what parents I think don't understand is that there are 25, maybe 25 to 30 students in that one class, but a teacher's load can be up to 180. It could be, depending on the level that they're teaching, they could have over 180 students, 150 to 180 students that they teach for the entire year. And so you have to keep track of all 180 students and know what level they're on and where they are. And you have essentially 180 children, your own children, because most teachers take this home. It's not something you leave at work.
Yes.
So you're thinking about all 180 of your new children. And it's a very taxing. That's why I think the classroom load is very important. It's not like on the elementary level where you have those 15 to 30 kids the entire year. In high school, you have maybe 150, 180 students because you have the 6 classes. And so you have to be aware of all students at all times. And if you just think about that, it's quite taxing just so you can think about the massive amount of information that you have to carry, because you have to know their home background, whether or not they can handle the information that you're trying to exchange. So accountability is a challenge, and I will say that for any teacher, it is a challenge. And some teachers are successful at keeping themselves on point, and there are those who, I hate to say it, they did not do it as well. And so it does cause frustration. I can understand the frustration, but I really wish that we had an answer for teacher burnout. We do not, except to lighten the load, except to provide them more resources and to assist them in doing the job that they have to do.
That's good.
And that's a real problem.
It is, absolutely. Christy, what's on your heart?
Good morning, Morning Glow family. How are y'all doing? This is Christy from the 318. This is really an excellent topic because I come from a long lineage of teachers. And I'm a tutorer, so I tutor kids in my spare time. And we have a organization that gives free tutoring to kids from K through 5. And it's a free program that try to bridge the gap with students here in our parish. And the one thing that I can say about this is that it's so important for parents to be on the same wavelength, to not have that mentality that they're against. It's not the teacher against the parents. It's a equality thing that has to be done, because you have to understand your kids spend more time inside the school than they do at home. So it's like a home away from home. And if you're not working together, it can make it difficult for the teacher. And then it's like you said, um, when you work so hard to get the student to a certain point, and then they go home and their mom say, "Oh, you ain't got to listen to her," or "That ain't your mama, I'm your mama, I tell you what to do." It becomes difficult for that child, and then that child have mixed feelings. I don't know who to listen to or what to do, and now you have a disturbance and a behavior issue that affects the other children's trying to learn. So, we have to learn how to work together as a team to get to, because it's our children that are falling behind. It's our children that are suffering because we have mothers and fathers that haven't graduated high school or doesn't have the education, and these children are the first to do to finish school, or many things, and so they don't know how to do the math problems, and they become shameful that they don't know how to help, and then they become a hindrance. So it does have to be, too. And I've seen experiences where some teachers are plain evil to our people, to our children. I've seen principals just pick on one child until that child just leave, because they're either too smart, they don't want to follow the the mainstream of what they're trying to do. So I've seen both sides of it.
Good deal.
And I'm not against homeschooling, but if you do choose to homeschool your child, you do have to understand that you become the educator. You become the person. You're not mom anymore. You're mom and the educator. So the team has to be within you. So that is a responsibility.
Good deal. Good deal. Dr. Spears, do you want to comment on that?
She's exactly right. Exactly right. Everything she said was spot on.
Good deal.
Totally spot on.
We have a caller, but I'm gonna go to Sherry before we go to the caller. Sherry, what's on your heart?
Yes, I'm an educator as well as Leonard is. I have my first master's degree in elementary education, but I only substitute teach right now, and I went to go get my master's in something else because I unfortunately was in a situation where I had a long-term sub position when I was working in Rockdale County, and I know that there are some challenges, and I was in it to win it because at the end of the day, these are kids. I had to call a parent because her child was bullying a disabled child. He pushed her down and kicked her, and I told him I had to isolate him away from the other class because he was being mean. So I had to call this parent, and she told me, I don't have time for this. I have 6 other kids and I'm pregnant. I don't have time for this. So that right there had a lasting effect on me. I'm like, this is your child. Learning starts at home. The child does not come out the womb and come straight to the edge to the schoolhouse. So a lot of things are teachers are being blamed for things that are going on in the classroom, and it's like they take a lot of the flack, which is not all their part. And it's like parents, I guess where I got turned off of why I'm not teaching full time is that the parents are not doing their part. I am that parent. If you call me, I come running because at the end of the day, we got to work together to get the job done. I have put my blood, sweat, and tears into raising my kids. I have laid the foundation. Both of my kids were reading before they hit kindergarten. They were reading. My 7th grader reads at a high school level. My 2nd grader reads at a 4th grade level. They are both certified DeKalb County students, and I put my blood, sweat, and tears in it. So when a parent, my teachers call and say, "Hey, Miss Banks, your child is acting up," I'm up there. Matter of fact, they tried to call me from the office, and they was like, "Wait a minute, who are you looking for?" She's in the parent center. She's already here. They wouldn't pull me out, and I had to go handle my children. So I'm that parent. I'm gonna get in there and we get the job done. But I have worked in the school system. I have had a classroom where a student was acting unruly, and they had to go call security on this child. They had to put him in another class. The teacher literally had to put a table up against the door because the child kept running around the school. And they didn't have any help. They were not helping. And then it's like the teacher's supposed to be a security guard, a counselor, a social worker, the mama, the daddy, and everything. And I've been in school. I've been in situations where the child would come to school dirty all the time. We got tired of it, and we bathed the child. The child started jumping like he was a stranger to water and soap. So I've been in the trenches. I've done the work, and I know what it is. But
What's your question?
like you saying that they're burnt out,
Mm-hmm.
and they need backup from the administrators. They need backup from the teachers, from the parents, to get this so we can work on one accord.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. Good deal. And see, that's what people don't understand. And my wife, like I said, she's an educator. I see firsthand what it takes, and what a teacher have to do above and beyond that title of teacher. It carries a lot. It carries a whole lot, and there's a lot tied into it. And I applaud all the ones that's out there that's doing it and doing it well and doing it for the right reasons. Because I'm gonna tell you something. My wife has said many times over, I have 30 kids. Because she was educated, I have 30 kids. I said, wait a minute, what was your first time? What are you talking about? Because she becomes a mother to each one of those children. And there's no separation. She loved what she do. She loved the students. We have to bottle that. And yes, there is something called burnout. Yes, there is. And that leads me to this. And I know you said earlier that there's really no answer to it, but can there be a situation whereas if you notice that a particular teacher is going through that burnout, can you pull him or her out of that classroom, replace her with someone else for that period, and give her a time to get herself back together, and then possibly, and I know, money, funding, and all that, so I know how all that works, but would that be a possibility, Doctor?
That's a definite possibility, but that's often not an option. You have to understand, in the very beginning of the school year, you have your teacher load, and then you have, if you pull the teacher out, you have to have a substitute. That's based on the format and the structure of the school environment.
Mm-hmm.
So you can pull the teacher out and allow them time, medical leave. That's how we handle it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a structure for handling medical leave or for any type of leave for a teacher. But I would say an answer to one possible answer that I lean towards for teachers who have burnout is changing the teaching format, sharing that load in some type of way with another resource at the same time. Perhaps that teacher does not teach as many students.
Mm-hmm.
Or there is you have to find out what really is the challenge. Is it the number of students that they're dealing with? Is it a particular type of student that they're dealing with? Maybe perhaps there is perhaps it's an education level that they're dealing with. You have to find out what exactly is the cause of the burnout. Is it parent involvement? And as you said, parent involvement is very important, but oftentimes PTA meetings can look fairly slim.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to, before we go any further, I want to thank Dr. Spears, because you're actually giving us a vision inside of the classroom, inside of the teachers. And this is something that we don't get every day. And we broadcast right now to 58 countries. And so I definitely appreciate you coming on, talking to us, and giving us this vision and this view that we beforehand did not have. A lot of people didn't know what it takes. They think it's just a cakewalk situation. You go to school, you get your paper, you go into the classroom, you be there for 30 years. But it's a lot more than that. It's a lot more than that. We have a caller on the line. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Good morning.
Good morning, Tawana. How you doing? Oh, you beating up your phone over there?
Good morning, Tawana.
Good morning.
There you go. Much better. We're talking.
Good morning.
And Tawana, Dr. Spears is the brainchild behind Black Friday. She came, we had a conversation that she wanted to do on Black Friday, where we highlighted business and people like yourself that's in the community that's making that's doing great work in and around the community. So I want to applaud her for this idea. Tawana, we're talking to Dr. Deborah Spears. She's actually in education, and she has a much greater title than that. I'm gonna give her the liberty if she wants to say exactly what she does to do that. But say hello to Dr. Spears.
Good morning.
Do you have a question?
I'm just listening because I'm late this morning, so I might have a question later. I don't have a question right now.
Okay. Leonard, what's on your heart, brother?
There's some good information. And one thing you learn about, first of all, about teachers. Teachers are caught between a rock and a hard place. And without the proper leadership development,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have an issue, like you say, with burnout. And it takes that leadership person to understand how to address that issue. Why is there a burnout? What is there a particular issue? Is there a personal issue that's causing the burnout?
Mm.
Because one thing, I used to draw the contrast between working in corporate America and working as a teacher is you lose sight of your work as, let's say, profit of your work.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas a manager always works towards an objective, there's a deadline and things like that, and their actual livelihood is judged and based on their performance.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a teacher is allowed to fail because they have to deal with this burden of human being. They deal with actual human beings as opposed to numbers every day or data. That's a huge contrast when you say, and I notice you keep saying she.
Mm-hmm.
That's another component that people have to address. Are we not focusing on professionalizing teachers because we don't feel that they need it? Is it a resource issue? Or do we just expect women to be that good with kids that they should be able to handle education?
That's good.
It has to change. This mind frame has to change. It has to change from both sides. Teachers must understand. Yes, you may be mothers, but that is not where your performance value is here. There are completely different standards that they have to meet on the job that they really should not be imposing that personal character so much.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a skill, like she said, there's an art to teaching. And a lot of times teachers don't get the development that they need to address all these changes in education. And so you will get burnt out trying to do the things the same way with fewer resources, and it don't actually work the way you thought it was when you was in school. Kids just don't come in and sit down and ready to learn.
Mm-hmm.
You can't kiss everybody on the cheek and that make it better.
Mm-hmm.
We have to professionalize teaching and make sure that teachers feel exactly how important they are to making this product called public education work.
Mm-hmm. Let me see this. And Leonard, that was powerful. Definitely appreciate it. And I'm gonna go to Dr. Spears and let her respond to it. But when you say a teacher is allowed to fail, what goes into my heart at that moment is, if that teacher failed, is that teacher, he or she failing, or are he or she failing the students if they're placed in that situation? Because again, my focus is really, I love teachers. I can say it a million times. My wife is an educator, so I'm in that. But my focal point is the students. My focal point is making sure that the students get what because at the end of the day, I think that's why the teachers are there for the students. Dr. Spears, am I off base?
You're spot on. The goal is student education, is learning. Remember, the evidence of teaching is learning. And that's how all educators or educational systems are measured, by the amount of learning going on in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand that it's a marriage between the two. Yes. Teaching is a very big element, but learning is also the other side of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good deal. Good deal. Christy, what's on your heart?
Hey, everybody, again, I just want to reiterate that my grandmother used to always say this good old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You can lead children to education, but if they have their mind made up that they don't want to do it and they don't want to learn, it's really stressful. And I want to say this, we talked about burnout. You know, there's a lot of professions where being burnt out is just not an option, you know, and I know it happens. It happens to doctors, it happens to nurses, it happens to corporate American people, it happens to a lot of people to burn out. But one thing that we have to understand is like even in healthcare right now, with everything that's going on, there's a lot of people that's burnt out mentally, physically, spiritually, in every way. But if failure is an option, then where would we be? And I think in teachers, failure should not be an option. A failure should not be okay. And that's a failure within yourself. Now, if you do everything you can and you know you can put yourself out and that child still hasn't done, then that's not on you, that's on them, that's their failure. Even though it's a marriage and a cooperation, everybody still got to do their part for it to work together. So if I do my part and I go halfway, but you don't go completely the way you should, then that person has to take responsibility, that parent has to take responsibility, because we are trying to develop people that will be productive in our society. And you're right, Sherry, it does start at home, because I'm one of them parents that, look, I might not be at the school every time the door open, but you hit my phone, my child gonna feel me. My child gonna understand where I'm coming from, that you don't disrespect nobody. You follow the rules the way you're supposed to follow the rules. And you're supposed to do what you need to do. Like my children understand, and my children understand that mediocrity is not an option in our house. Now, if you go to class and you do your best and you come out with a grade, and I know I seen you study, and okay, that's something that you have a shortage in, and we can work on that. But just surely not trying, not doing what you're supposed to do, that's not an option. So
Exactly.
we as a people have to let our children know that mediocrity is not an option because you're Black.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Spears?
She's spot on, but you have to understand discipline is a major part of education these days. I don't know if I could show you a chart. It started out at one level and it went up exponentially. So now it is a huge issue within the schools. Now we have resource officers. We didn't have those before in earlier times. So you have to understand, now we're moving towards now a blended learning format where the discipline now is back on the parents.
Yes.
Who were not disciplined before. Remember that corporal punishment was taken out of school, and I could tell you so many stories about how there are many teachers, if I just had 5 minutes to take it from the bathroom, you understand?
Yes.
So discipline is a huge issue, and that's one of our challenges that causes teachers great frustration. It's not the ability of the student; it's the ability of not the ability, the natural ability, or not able to understand the material. It's, can little Johnny sit down? You understand?
Exactly.
Can you sit here and not be affected by your neighboring students? It's a challenge for every teacher. In every class is different. Because there's a different mixture of students in that classroom. So how do you establish effectively order in your classroom?
Yes.
And sometimes that's the challenge is knowing how to do that effectively every time. And usually that's where we have the biggest challenges right now.
Dr. Spears, let me ask you this question. Throughout the college, when they're going through college, when the teachers are going through college, are they really, and I don't know because I've never gone into education, but are they prepared for some of the issues that they may have to deal with? Are they really prepared for this?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because you have resources, which is access to professionals who can support you. But when it comes down to figuring out a plan of attack to make sure that you can establish that discipline and order in your classroom, it takes time. And oftentimes, if you miss that window, there's a window in the very beginning of the school year. When you miss that window to establish the rules and guidelines within your classroom, every educator knows this. You miss that window, then you have an uphill battle for the next 3 to 4 weeks to get the minds and attentions of your students. So you have that order because establishing order is important in the very beginning of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
So this blended learning format is a challenge because it's you're because of this pandemic now,
Mm-hmm.
you're taking that order that was established and you're switching it immediately into a new environment. Now no longer are you in the classroom, you're at home. And then you're at home and you're not on that schedule because children need that schedule, that structure, because that's what they're used to. So
Mm-hmm.
now they're having to modify their learning style so that they can understand. And so it is a challenge. It is a definite challenge. And if your parent is not a teacher or able to teach their own children, that's another challenge,
Mm-hmm.
then you're left at a disadvantage. And
Exactly.
having access to those resources to help you exchange that information becomes an issue.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Chrissy, yeah, that's a great question, Chrissy. I posed that question for us.
Yes, I had a question. I know you were saying about the students sitting down. So my question was, how does ADHD and ADD play a part in teaching? And the second question was, a lot of teachers misdiagnose students with ADHD and ADD because they're not sitting down or they're hyperactive. So how does that go into the teaching?
Excellent question. Very good. Well, for me, and based on my experience and based on the research that I have seen, that requires a shift in the teaching style because there's a different learning style present. So when you're dealing with a student who has, shows the signs of ADD or ADHD, you've got to change your teaching style to help them learn. Meaning they have to be allowed to do things in the classroom. I would give my students a job. You understand, to make them feel as though they are part of the community. You have to create that community so the children would have a job. Your job is to take care of these routine tasks. And so that's what they become accustomed to. Whereas other students don't have this job. You give this student a job in your classroom, or you give this child a special task where they have to get up and move. You see
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I often say it's almost I say sometimes it's just me talking. I would say it's almost criminal to make an ADHD student sit still,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
any student sit
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
I think they have to be able to get up and move
Mm-hmm.
and learn, and there are different teaching styles, which means you have to be ready to shift your teaching style to match the needs of your students.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. Tawanda, do you have a question or concern?
I do not. Just listening to that. Don't have a question.
Okay. Okay. Good deal. Good deal. Leonard, what's on your heart, Leonard? Talk to me.
To address a couple of things, like she mentioned before, there's definitely going to be, and they're doing a lot that they can right now, since you brought up ADHD or what have you. And this issue of, I believe, the ADHD associated with the behavior issues, the behavior issue then becomes the problem as opposed to the ADHD or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, it's very difficult for teachers and parents a lot of times may not be accepting or be denying the issue. One of the things that I proposed, I remember working with a lot of teachers, is how they felt about the actual education system being compulsory. Because what a lot of people don't understand is that we have a compulsory education system. And what that means, it is pretty much against the law not to have your child enrolled in school. Okay? And a lot of people are not aware of that issue. And as the doctor was just saying, a teacher has a certain amount of time to establish the rules and regulations of the class, what is expected. And it's almost like, say, for instance, we talk about businesses having organizational culture. There's classroom culture. And classroom culture is very important because you have so many different types of students. Like she said, if you have a student that has ADHD, I like the way she said it. There's a different learning style in the room. Now, what we've tried to do what we can in public education with this learning style, but that thing has went to a level of almost you can find yourself in criminal issues dealing with these behavioral issues. So something drastic is going to happen. Of course, that being removing the child from the public education environment. This is how a lot of kids wind up in alternative school. It's not, and let's get it, teachers don't diagnose ADHD. They provide what they have observed, and there's another individual that will be responsible for diagnosing ADHD, prescribing medications if possible, if necessary, and that type of thing. Parents need to be a lot more involved with the behavior component of this issue. If you don't act right when you go to work, they fire you. Certain levels of behavior that come along with child development were not properly provided for within education. It's as if almost they created a school around the notion that every student was the same, every student came from the same background, and the teacher should be able to just stand there and those students behave like robots. And any teacher will tell you that's not true. There are some serious challenges that are way outside of the teacher's pay grade. I'm one of those people who believe that a teacher should teach. That's what you're hired to do. You're not hired to be someone's mother. You're hired to deliver education. Not only are you going to be judged on whether or not these children learn or not, that is greatly going to impact your livelihood as a teacher. So teachers are becoming a lot more creative in how they have to deal with these students. But what is unfair is not providing them the additional support services needed to handle these issues. Behavior deficits have always been around. Attention deficit, all these new words for them. And it had to have a word because it became so prevalent. It is exactly what it is. It's hyperactive activity. I don't think it's unnatural, but I think the way it's being dealt with, I have an issue with that.
Good deal. Good deal. We have another caller. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, this is fine. Good morning.
Good morning, Donna. How you doing?
I'm all right. Doing fine. How about yourself?
Hey, doing good, doing good. We're talking to Dr. Spears, and she's actually we're talking about education. I know you've been listening in for a minute, so tell me what's on your heart right now.
Well, I commend you all for your efforts and the challenge that you face, because you definitely have to be multitask. Because if you got 20 students, you got 20 different attitudes. And then you got to deal with 20 different families, because it's not only the kids come to school, they bring their parents' attitudes. And some of the parents' attitudes is not too good. So, I commend you, because every once in a while they ask me to to do like vacational Bible school at church. And I'm sorry, but I put kids out of vacational Bible class. And I tell them, I said, go and get your parent and you come back with them. You can't do that. Go to somebody else's class. Now, that may seem wrong, but what I'm saying is, you may have some good students in your class, but the ones that are not, you still got to deal with them too, and still teach the ones that want to learn. And then sometimes you got to be prepared, because the students that have them parents that are really not parents, they want to come to the class, the school, and cut up. So you got to deal with that too. So I commend you all.
Exactly. Dr. Spears, what's on your heart?
Well, I think the biggest challenge I think we're dealing with now is that there's a shift from because of this pandemic, there is a shift of education to this blended learning format. And I think that we are at a huge disadvantage because of access to the technology resources for each and every student. There are solutions to that, and there are makeshift. That's what's happening now. We're creating makeshift solutions to this challenge that we're facing, and we don't know how long this challenge will go. So my concern is more on the lines of how much learning is being lost because of now you've shifted the educational responsibilities from the professionals who, in whatever format they were in, whatever the professionals, to now it's at home. And I cannot tell you how many phone calls I do receive, or inboxes or messages I receive on how I can from a parent, how can I better teach this subject? Or what can they learn? Is there someplace is there video, online references, online resources? And that's the parents who have access to technology. But the challenge that we're facing now is how do we teach their children from this schoolhouse model to this online format, which we're not accustomed to. That's our challenge now. That's what we're faced with right now. And I do understand the traditional format of education is going to, I guess, as a result of this pandemic, it's going to be a real shift, a real change. I don't know, and I'm not very confident that we'll ever return to the traditional format because this pandemic is creating a culture of medium for online learning. So are we prepared? We have to prepare our parents now and our teachers on how to teach in this particular format. And now with all those different learning styles, you're still going to have them present, but you now have to jump through some serious hoops or change your teaching style in order to get that learning. And it's going to be a huge challenge. And I don't know the answer.
Okay. What are the pros and the cons in regards to what you just said?
Well, the pro is that we'll have access to more individualized education. That's the pro. And the pro is there's less. I guess I would say when you have more than one student in the classroom, there's less influence on that child from relationships and cultural relationships within the classroom. There's less influence of those outside negative influence. The con is you lose that peer learning component. In the classroom, if you're a teacher, you understand, sometimes the teacher's not teaching, another student might be teaching, or that student may be learning through experiences. We have those type of kids where they're reflective learners, and they're learners that actually learn by watching another student do the task or teach the task. So there's you're losing some of those tools that you use in the classroom to exchange information or exchange knowledge. So then you're now having to figure out how to use this new medium to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got to do it for children who don't have internet at home, who don't have access to resources at home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is a huge challenge that we're dealing with, and I applaud those school systems that have taken on the challenge and created this blended learning format. But the success of any new instructional learning is not going to be seen for the next 2 to 3 years. You won't be able to see how successful you are until you see it in a few years. And you see that there's you have to gauge that understanding, gauge that education, and you don't know if that student is actually getting the information or getting the education. You can't be there to see that learning or see that light bulb go off, which is the thrill of every teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
You're at a disadvantage. You're at a huge disadvantage because most teachers need that individual personal relationship to see whether or not that student is really catching it, really getting it. That's how you're gauging it. So it's a challenge, and
let me say,
I don't know how successful we will be.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like, and I'm gonna go to Sherry. She has something to say from what Leonard said, and we have a call. We're gonna go to the call in just 1 second as well. But it's almost like if you equate this to sports, in football, it's almost like, you know, going through the whole process and then scoring that touchdown. It's like, or in basketball, it's like in the last couple of seconds, 3 seconds on the clock, and you have the ball is in your hand, and you're able to shoot and you're able to score. It's almost like in equating to sport. That's what it sounds like to me. But if you take away those elements, the teacher have no way of celebrating. Am I off?
Exactly.
Okay, good deal. Sherry, what's on your heart?
Yeah, Leonard was talking about how kids had to be in school, and that was basically a law that he was talking about. Yeah, I remember a student that had the parent would just bring her to school whenever she felt like bringing her to school. She was basically too lazy to get up and bring her to school, so they slept all day, and she brought her to school maybe once or twice a week, and it was sad. And they kept telling her, you can't keep doing this. It's this critical in her education because the child was delayed, but she really didn't care. In another situation with the ADHD, I feel that my cousin was misdiagnosed, and then I had spoke to my it was my cousin, her son was misdiagnosed, and I felt like that she just wanted to get the check, because a lot of people, when your child is ADHD, you could put them on that medicine, you get a check for that. And because that's considered, I guess, a disability, but it was not. He had a disability. It was a behavior issue stemmed from his parent. His father was not, and it was in and out of his life. But kind of piggyback off of what we were talking about yesterday. Where's daddy? He was in and out of his life, and he had issues about that. And I kept telling my cousin, she didn't want to listen. She was like, "No, well, he's taking this medicine. I can see a change in his behavior because he's being drugged." That was not the issue. So when he got older, we realized, because he was able to articulate himself because he was old enough, and he's like 24 now. He was like, I had issues because my father was not around. Mm-hmm. So all that time when he was diagnosed as being ADHD, that was not an issue. So basically, this drug was put into his system that was not necessary. And I told her that, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. Good deal. We have another caller. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Bishop. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Bishop. How you doing?
Good morning, Bishop.
Yeah, we're talking to Dr. Deborah Spears, and she's in education, and we're talking about the educational system today. What's on your heart?
Well, that is a great topic to be discussing, especially during this time of the coronavirus, when parents who are not related to understanding elements of giving good instruction and the system, the way it's set up, it's not designed for that. I think the doctor can confirm that statement. I look at what's going on in DeKalb County. A lot of problems we're having. The children already having learning problems. Parents are not really equipped to be able to teach their children the things they need to be successful moving forward. The essence of life is one thing. We can teach them how to fix it, do certain things around the house, cook and clean. But when it comes down to elevating the mind, to be able to read and rationalize some of the issues and topics that we deal with on a daily basis, I take my hat off to them for trying to those who are willing to do it and doing their best, as opposed to those who may be suffering from some type of mental disability, and parents really don't know how to instruct and teach them. That's why these professionals that are out there in the field today, school teachers, counselors, and principals, need to be making more money than what they're making, because these special trainings that's put up with so much more. So I want to thank the doctor and everyone that's in that profession of education. So that's just how I look at it.
Good deal. Good deal. I say this all the time. I say this all the time, and Doctor, I want you to comment on this as well. I think we're kind of off base in the United States, or maybe even the world, as to how we compensate our teachers. I think we're really off base, and people say, "Well, Raheem, that's not right." Okay, that's fine, but this is my opinion. I think they should be paid more than a professional athlete that go out there and play a little boy's game. I think that they should be paid millions of dollars, because you can't have an athlete to do the things that they do without a teacher. There's always some teacher, and I can think back to my second grade teacher that actually put me on the right course. And this is second grade. Miss Copeland was her name, and she actually I don't know if she's still with it, but she actually did something in my life, because I was one of those students. I was all over the place. I was doing all kind of, I was bad. But Miss Copeland sat me down, and she took time, and she told me, I care for you, and I want to make sure that I do the best by you. And the conversation went on. She said some things to me that had never been said to me before, and that allowed me to focus in and become who I am today. And so I wish she was listening. I wish I can go back and thank her. But that's a teacher. That's a second grade teacher, and I don't know what it is about second grade, but a lot of people say that their second grade teacher made a huge impact on their life. I can attest because of that. Dr. Spears, what do you say to that?
I say that's spot on. Building relationships are one of the main tools that we use in the classroom to create that order. Mm-hmm. Remember, that window of opportunity in the very beginning of the school year is when you have their attention. And so that's where you establish the relationship there, and you establish rules. And over the course of the school year, that's where you build it. And so you have to build those individual relationships with each and every student, which is why you have, I would say, 180 children. So they become your children. Mm-hmm. And you do take them home.
Yeah.
So establishing relationships is the foundation for establishing order.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good deal. Good deal. Anna, what's on your heart? Talk to me.
So I don't think I said this from the beginning. I've been kind of going back on my comment earlier and my question. Dr. Spears, thank you so much for taking the time, and and if you're still an educator, for changing and molding children and/or college students. I'm not sure where exactly you're at. And I also wanted to say that you made a comment earlier that it's a lot based on home, and it's true, because I can speak for being a parent of a disabled child. If you're not teaching your children how to behave everywhere, including a disabled one, it's unacceptable. And parents that do that, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, because you should make that educator's job that much easier. And it starts at home, because half the time they're with the school system, the other half they're at home. And I've always said that. Another thing is that Sherry made a statement about ADHD and being diagnosed. If any parent is doing that and trying to get a diagnosis, and/or the school system trying to get the parent to put that child under medication, you're having that child lose so much. One of my children, the disabled one, is very all over the place. He is hyper. I will not medicate him, because I have taught him from a young age. If you get bored, say, I need a breather, because that's usually what it is. They get bored, they need to move on and do something else, and then they come back. However, and then leading to all these questions that are being asked, it kind of makes you wonder, so how is the school system about to change? Are teachers actually going to start teaching online? Which I think it's good to a certain extent, because many of us, I'm sure, have done it through college. I took some online classes, and for me, and of course I can't speak for everybody else, they were a lot easier because it let me focus a lot better on what was going on. There was chats going on, the teacher was teaching, they would send their work, you would do it. It was a lot easier, but I'm one of these self-motivated type people and very introverted. I've learned with age to be more outgoing, but I did not like being in a classroom setting, never was the thing that worked for me. And I think maybe smaller group settings, but you know, I commend teachers and your work, because I hear teachers or now assistant principals like Raheem's wife, that's not easy work, especially when you're up there and you're dealing with like the actual problems when it actually gets out of the classroom. You know, you know, educators, and this is for men and women, because a lot of times I see that from what I've seen when my children were in the public school system and even in the private schools, the male teachers, like an extra applause to you, because they got a lot more put on them, because they can put their foot down and be like, no, it's not going to happen, and have that force of a man that sometimes is needed in these children's life. And I just want, you know, that to be out there too, that I know it isn't easy, because I know some of these parents just do not cooperate, and that's not fair to that teacher, that's not fair to that child or anybody else or other children, because most of the time that's where we're dealing with bullying and stuff, and that's just not cool. So thank you, you know, for what you do, Dr. Spears, and other educators. We appreciate each and every one of you guys.
Absolutely. Dr. Spears, let me ask you this question. Then we're going to go to a couple of our online callers. I don't know how long you've been in education, and you can tell me if you want to, if not, that's fine. But of the time that you've been an educator and been in education, what would you say will be the 3 top accomplishments that you have had, rewards that you have had in being in education? What will be the top 3?
Okay, I've been in education for a long time, a long time. I'd say I started out teaching in a Christian school when I first got out of college, for about 2 years. Mm-hmm. And you know, you don't teach for the money, you teach for the passion of it and to getting the results. I'm results driven, so I know what my trigger is. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, I've taught through 10 years of high school, middle and high school, and college, and then I transitioned into the workforce to teaching at the corporate level. And you never stop, you know, touching all levels of education. You never stop doing that, even today. So the accomplishments, I would say, well, let's see, Antavis has 180,000 accomplishments, because every child, I think, I have so many different children that I can remember each and every one. And I can remember the impact that they made on me, because I had to build that relationship with each of my students. And so I remember Antavis Pickens, and I remember Terry, and I remember, oh my goodness, all of my football players. I remember each and every one that I had to impact on, so that they could let down their guard long enough and learn something from me. I remember that was the accomplishment. My students, that's the accomplishment. Remember, the evidence of teaching is learning, and I'm results driven. So the result is the children. The result is that they learned. So that is my accomplishment. I couldn't tell you awards. I don't know that they give out awards for each and everything that you do, but they certainly award you over time, and that's wonderful. But most teachers aren't in it for the awards or the accolades. They're in it because of the results.
Mm-hmm.
That's if you're a good teacher.
Absolutely.
So I have 180,000. And I like to tell people that I never forget. I might forget your name, but I don't forget your face. I don't forget the exchange, because every student and every exchange is an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so you learn whether you learn what not to do. You also learn what to do, what's working for you, and how do you shift. And you're learning each and every day. It's a lifelong type thing.
Yeah.
And you don't ever get rid of it. You don't ever stop either. So you're always learning.
Exactly. And I'm gonna tell you something. I heard the passion in your voice as you were explaining that. So I thank you, man. It poured out. I want to go right now to our Donald. Donald, what's on your heart? Then I'm gonna go to Bishop. Donald, what's on your heart?
That's one thing that you can always tell.
Mm-hmm.
Just when you hear a person talk about what they do, you hear the passion. And you can tell whether it's just a job or it's a calling, a gift. Some people are gifted.
Yeah.
They're ordained to do a certain thing, and some people just pick something because. Now I know teaching is not. I know some of them say they're doing it for the money. Well, they ain't getting paid nothing. If it compares to other professions, that kind of like choosing to work at a job with minimum wage. I don't think they picking it for the money. I don't know, but you can always tell. You can hear it, and I'm like you. You can hear the passion. I had some teachers that kind of like. I remember Miss Camouche. Her name was Camouche. I'm from Louisiana, so we got some names. And
that's 318-504.
She would tear them knuckles up. But she wanted you to learn. Miss Theory, I remember Miss Theory. I remember Mr. Faulkner. I remember Mr. Jerry. And all these teachers like that, they put something in. They didn't care nothing about whether you wanted to come in with an attitude or not. I remember Miss Sylvester. She'll say, she'll call you out in a minute, but she wanted you to learn what she was actually there to do. So anyway, that's what's on my mind.
See, and that's beautiful, because he could go over and call the names of the teachers that made a difference. So teachers have a great impact on their kids' lives, man. And I don't think they always understand the amount or the level of impact that they have on these students' lives. It is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Bishop, what's on your heart?
Man, I'm gonna tell you, I appreciate what the doctor was saying. Like you, I felt her connection, her commitment, and knowing, yes, we all have a tendency to forget people's names, especially in the professional education field for so many years, and having to do with so many children that don't remember everyone, but you will remember the face. But the impact that you played in those students' lives when they were around you or with you is everlasting. I have several teachers that I can call off who were very instrumental in things that I did in order to be successful in life. But I listened to the news yesterday, maybe the doctor can elaborate on this. And I know there are children that were failing in school, that were not, meeting their standards.
Hey, Bishop, your phone is coming through. It's a little muffled on your phone. Are you on a Bluetooth or something? Or talk directly to the phone for us so we can hear exactly what you're saying. It's coming through just a little bit muffled.
How about this? Is it a little bit better?
Is that better?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go, right there. Go ahead.
Apparently, I was in a drop zone area in my house. But what I was asking was, and I was looking at the news and said, well, we don't have to worry about any children being retained because of the coronavirus. And if the teachers knew that this child was already failing, are they going to be promoting these children? And or do you think that's the wise thing to move them to the next level? Knowing that they were not prepared already before this situation took place.
Okay, that is, like I was saying earlier, this is new territory for us.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be unfair from a leadership perspective, from an administrative perspective, it would be unfair to retain a student before giving them the complete and total school year. So it is unfair to do that. Although if the child was failing, um, I always say there's hope until the last bell rings. Until I have to
Mm-hmm.
put in those last grades, there's still hope.
Mm-hmm.
But there are mandates and laws that we are required to meet in terms of seat time, in terms of educational opportunities that we afford each child. So then that is a challenge. But in order to alleviate that challenge, they just simply say you will not be retained. There's going to be some, if we do ever return to a traditional format as a result of, us getting through this phase, which I hope we do. I hope we do return to a traditional format that we do know about, and then add this blended learning to our toolbox. But if we ever do return to a traditional format, I think there needs to be some additional opportunities
Mm-hmm.
afforded these students, and whether it means extending the school year for next year, or whether it means adding in resources or adjusting our learning format so that that time can be made up, or that time can be extended. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but
Mm-hmm.
there has to be something that is afforded to make up for this particular situation, because as I see it now, we're going to be in this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this is definitely something we've never seen before. And so we're going to have to make some modifications, and I don't know what direction we're going to go in. But definitely the most what education is leaning towards right now is the blended learning format. So perhaps they'll make that the goal, or
Mm-hmm.
our instructional tool. And so in that, with that being said, if the child was failing before, there's going to be very little that we can say in terms of how we're going to instruct that failing student.
Mm-hmm.
It's really going to be a challenge. It is a huge challenge right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want everybody, if you don't mind, share this broadcast, because everybody need to hear. And Dr. Spears, man, she came in and she's really helping and educating us. She educated today. I thought she's supposed to be she's still educating, but this is a great thing because she's really teaching us some of the things that we did not know. And so if you don't mind doing so, everybody share the broadcast. If you're listening in, you're tuning in, share the broadcast and make sure that you have people to actually call in as well. 678-381-1973, 678-381-1973. The phone lines are open. Christy, what's on your heart?
Hey, I have a couple questions. I've been sitting here listening. My first question was, what about racism and hate that's involved with some of the teachers in their teacher format? I know I have experienced here where my daughter went through the metal detectors and her shirt wasn't tucked in all the way, because it was like when she raised her hand, it came up. So the teacher asked her to tuck her shirt in. She tucked her shirt in and went to the cafeteria. And when she sat down and raised up, the teacher followed her to the cafeteria and said, and raised her jacket up and said, "Your shirt not tucked in. I'm giving you in-house suspension because you're willful disobedient." So I do want to speak, I want to touch on the hate and the racism part that goes along with some of the teachers, as well as what about teachers passing athletes because of their athleticism and not really teaching them. They're not teaching them to pass the class. They're just passing them so they can continue to play football, and it's at a disadvantage to them. So those are two of the questions I really wanted to ask Dr. Spears.
Okay, with racism and hate, my goodness, that's a very broad topic there. I can say that that could, I won't know, I wouldn't be able to address racism and hate because I taught primarily in Fulton County and in Atlanta Public Schools, where there were overwhelmingly African American. My population was, African American. The teaching staff, as well as the student population, was overwhelmingly African American. I'm not saying I didn't have students from other races and other cultures, but definitely, predominantly, it was African American. So I wouldn't say that racism doesn't exist in that format or in that environment. I would say that it is culturally, there are some biases culturally because, of course, we don't all come from the same culture. So each teacher has their own background. As I think someone mentioned it earlier, we're all human. So we bring in our life experiences to the classroom, and certainly it can transcend the professional environment. And that's why it needs to be strong leadership and oversight for that teacher. So when you're talking about racism and hate in this blended learning format, is that what you're asking?
Christy?
Yes, because some things are stereotypical, and even within the classroom, or whether it's blended online, there are some things that is going to be racially biased towards our people, and I'm not going to say intentionally, but I'm going to say because low economical status, may not have the computer, or may not can afford the books, or may not can do different things that will allow them to learn. But not only that, as far as the teacher, this teacher may go out of their way for this students because it's a similar race to them, and they're going to make sure that they learn and have everything that they know. But if this student is not of their race or of their ethnicity, they may not go as strong for them as they would for someone of their own. And I've seen it happen a million times where I'm from, because my parish, where I am, in Wynn Parish in Louisiana, where I am, there are more predominantly white teachers, and it's more predominantly a white neighborhood. Not to say that predominantly Black doesn't have issues, but I can see where in my years of schooling and in my children's schooling, I've seen the principal, I've seen the school board director, I've seen all these people set rules and set against African Americans with school signs, with spirit signs, with cheerleading, with football. I mean, with the whole realm. So my question was like, how do a society like my society, my education, how do we fight against racism and violence in this new blended format? Or even if it goes back to the traditional school, what is a way as a parent that we fight against racism and hate when it's so blatant and so real?
The first step in all of that, and I would just say this to you, the first step is document, document, document. And then you've got to organize as parents and communities to provide the resources or to obtain the resources, and work with your school systems. Even if there is a disconnect there, you've got to work with your school system. You've got to organize as parents. You've got to become involved. But most importantly, evidence matters. Evidence is your case. Evidence is organized. Everything. You've got to document. Each and every opportunity that you see happening, no matter how small it is, it all goes into creating that totality of a picture. So you must document, document, document. And so a concerted effort between the parents and community leaders must take place. I don't know if you have a school council, school board, or student advocates. You've got to mobilize your resources.
Yes.
And that's, you've got to document, but it's all based on, you got to give them some ammunition. And that is what those documents are. This happened, this happened, this happened. And then the pieces will the actual evidence from the research will draw a picture for anyone who's in oversight and says, okay, this is a real issue. It's not just
Yes.
someone's feeling. This is evidence. So
Yeah.
you've got to translate that feeling into legitimate evidence. So
Absolutely.
you've got to document.
Mm-hmm. And just for the record, we got a lot of people that just came in as well. We're talking to Dr. Spears. She's actually in education, and she's educating us today. She's educating us today on everything that's going on in the school system, where it is right now, where it's going, and where she would like for it to end up. Sherry, what's on your heart?
Hello, I'm writing some stuff down so I wouldn't forget. It's a couple of things that brought up that I remember how when I was working in another county, and it was a big issue. For one, during the wintertime, the students that were Mexican, their parents, they didn't have work during the wintertime because it was cold, so they would take their kids out of school for 3 months at a time. So you're talking about they would leave in November, December, and January. They would be out of school because parents went back to Mexico so they can work. So these kids were falling, they would come back in February, March sometimes, and they would be behind in the work because they had to leave and go back home for work because they work in construction work in a field, and then during the wintertime it wasn't a lot of work. That's the issue I'm hoping she can touch on. And plus, my kids go to a thing school, so it is a part of the contract that we signed that they have to volunteer at school. That's part of the requirements for your kids to be at the school, because we need parents hands-on, and they encourage the parents to spend time with the kids, eat lunch with the kids when during their lunchtime. It's mandatory. If you don't get these set amount of volunteer hours, and your child is not able to come back to the school. And another thing I wanted to touch on is special need kids, because I've seen this special need kids inside of the schoolhouse are considered as outsiders. I've seen when I work in special need department, I love the kids. And the principals, I had a situation where we were short-staffed in the classroom. It was supposed to be 3 people there, but it was 2. And the principal walked past the classroom and just looked in. I told her, come on. She was like, no. She was like, I just wanted to make sure y'all was okay. I was like, making sure it's okay. We supposed to have a 3rd teacher. If you really wanted to make sure we were okay, you would come in here and there to help out. But they knew we were short-staffed. They knew we had some challenges, but we made it through in the midst of that. But we're considered outsider within the school. Teachers walk past with their classroom and turn their nose up at these kids. At the end of the day, they're still kids, and they still need love and attention.
Mm-hmm,
so,
good.
I mean, that's just, I'm fired up about that. So I was just thinking about some of the things that I had to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Spears?
Okay, what you're dealing with is special populations. That's what we call in Georgia, special populations.
Mm-hmm.
So the transient student, and I also want to go back and touch on the question that was posed by the other young lady about passing athletes who are not quite up to par. And I want to go back and address that. But let's get back on this one. Transient students, that's what we have, you're speaking about when you have students who migrate for a certain period of time. So the school has to become aware of that child and make special moderations because there's something about that you cannot change because they have no control over that type of living style or living situation. And it is definitely a challenge, and each school system has its own or they're required to come up with their own learning plan for transient students or migrating students. I cannot speak to every school system, but the school system that I did work with, what we did was we created we tried to create a relationship with that parent, even though we didn't speak the same language. We tried to create a relationship with that parent. We had to try to educate them as much as possible, the students as much as possible, but that was a huge challenge. And oftentimes they do fall through the cracks because we don't know if we'll see them after a certain period of time. And we don't even know if they'll come back to the same school. They may go to another school. So it is often a challenge that we have not mastered. And that's, at least in the school system that I was working in, that we did not master. And that is an issue. And but every teacher still has to be aware.
Yes.
And educate the students when they show up. If they show up in the classroom, they're going to get educated that day. But the state law has requirements for transient students, has requirements that we educate transient students and that we need to address their challenges as best as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have no control, no real control over how each school system handles that.
Exactly.
When you said special needs children,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes at least in the classes that I taught, I was teaching career and technical education, and I don't know if you all are familiar with career and technical education, but I was the engineering teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you're teaching engineering and you don't have a choice of population, so you got every student from every walk of life. Career and technical education does not they see everyone. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We see everyone, whatever special population you are in, we see everyone. And so our job is to get them to a certain level to where they can meet a standard or a particular qualification within the workforce. So we're creating opportunities and bridging that gap between education and the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw every student. Not every teacher sees every student, as the young lady said.
Yeah.
Not every teacher sees every student,
Mm-hmm.
but we did.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a huge problem because you have no time to build that relationship. Like I said in the beginning, that relationship building is crucial to keeping order, but also crucial to creating that dynamic where you can exchange education,
Mm-hmm.
teaching, and learning.
Absolutely.
So that means you have to have that opportunity to meet and work with every population. And there are some we could not work with because of specific lack of abilities, but we still work with as many as we could,
Mm-hmm.
or whoever we were allowed to. And as far as the question about passing athletes, that is a huge issue in my world.
Mm-hmm.
Because they use career technical education as a dumping ground, and they say, well, just go turn some nuts and bolts and you'll be fine. And that's not how it works, because if you're a teacher, the objective is there is some learning.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to meet some standards. So our children, generally, you have to change your format. You have to change your teaching style to meet the need of that individual. So in our environment, what we would do was we would create competitions, because athletes love competition.
Yeah.
So we create competitions and create a learning style in which they could learn or better succeed, where they would elevate or excel.
Mm-hmm.
So they were integrated within the classroom because you change your teaching style to meet their needs.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's good. That's good. Leonard, what's on your heart, brother?
Oh, I'm just listening to certain issues. There's different things to take into consideration, and I think one of those things is that people need to understand teachers don't run education.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of those things when I remember going to school in education is the fact you learn so much about teachers. And, at first it was kind of shocking that individuals who we require so much from, like you say, may or may not be. They may or may not feel that they have a stake in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the huge disadvantages is teachers are your frontline managers.
Mm-hmm.
They know what's going on in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've seen in education and this move to professionalize teachers is to get them to understand their job from the perspective of a stakeholder.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing about teaching, it's very personal.
Yeah.
And we know when we get too personal and too emotional, a lot of times we don't always make the best decisions.
Mm.
So someone, it should be the principal, should be leading the culture of the organization. It should be providing those resources and things to the teacher to let the teacher know, I'm your support. If you need it, I'm gonna do whatever I can. Teachers don't have that type of support system.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are very independent. So, as students, when we were looking at it from and actually I participate in a lot of those, I'm usually the guy behind that mirror in the focus group. And so when you talk to things as things are being rolled out in education or what have you, you get to see perspective from parents and educators. And the task was, how do we align these rollouts with the community where parents understand what's happening and teachers understand what's happening? A lot of times you don't realize sometimes your teachers are teaching under the stress of not wanting to do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So just like your job, you may not want to do a certain thing a certain way. Teachers have the same issues. So we need to demand that our teachers are being supported from a parental and from a public level,
Yeah.
because that is what is missing in education, is supporting these teachers that way. Now, you made some comments before, and I wanted to address it
Mm-hmm.
about teacher pay and salary. If you want to make $100,000 a year, don't go to school to be a teacher. That's the answer. That's the answer. The structure for paying teachers is based on, first of all, the level of education. Usually it's a 4-year education. Then you have to look at where you're teaching at. So yes, everybody will say, we need to pay teachers more money. Okay, we're going to raise your property tax if we do that. If you want to invest in teaching, everybody's going to have to give up some more. Because I think the average teacher salary, probably based on 2017-18 statistics, was around 60 grand. And that's just the average. Of course, you see traditionally the states with the lowest amount of teacher pay are usually, of course, on y'all favor, that Confederate side of the game, Mississippi and these places. So that's why you hear Christy talking about what she talking about. Because there are still those places where you go where this is still huge and folks don't realize it's 2020 yet. So I think that
Right.
it's supporting teachers and really dealing with how the teacher has to protect their livelihood in these changing times. Distance learning has been an issue. It's been growing, it's getting better. Technology is great. Blended is where you go when you go to college anyway, most of the time. So it's great to try to do both of them, but we have to address, I love how she seems very passionate about learning.
Yes.
Learning. And she doesn't, and I'm pretty sure she has to deal with the constant influx of meeting data points and objectives as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that a teacher is bad because maybe the students aren't learning. But there has to be some concern to provide support to teachers who may not have all of the credentials. Maybe there's some type of, in military, we call it, before you become a sergeant, you gotta go to PLDC. That's a professional leadership development course. But we have to start adding incentives to teaching and also address the professional development. Teaching is very out. The teaching profession, I should say, education is very much out of control. It responds too slowly to changing demographics. And public education is probably the only thing that you can continuously not meet the objectives and still maintain the pay and incentives and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So the hardest part is not saying that teachers aren't doing their job. You can't take that approach unless you know what the job is and what they have to deal with. And we've already talked about student behavior and child development. That kept me from being in the classroom. I never had a desire to be a 30-year 6th grade teacher. You got to love sixth graders to do that.
Yes, you do.
So, you know, now you don't have to love your job to get paid.
Come on now, because that's what I love mine.
But teachers have that social piece that is so important. You'll lose a lot of that social interactivity because of this new environment. And therefore you may lose, like she was saying, there are certain components to learning that are directly related to the social interaction between the facilitator and the student.
Good deal. Let's gotta keep this thing going. Let me keep this thing going. I want to go to right now. Let me go to Donald. Donald, what's on your heart? Then Bishop coming to you. Donald, you there?
I just wondered, with the virus that's going out, what's the biggest? I don't know if you covered it or not, but what is the biggest challenge? What would be the biggest challenge for teachers? And now that basically, I think just parents would have to home teach the children, but still keeping in contact with those that you know that are advanced.
Okay, Dr. Spears.
Well, as I see it, the biggest challenge that we're going to be facing is access to technology and having the resources that for all students, not just those students who are, have a modest income, but or have families with modest incomes, but those who have access to resources where students can work and actually get involved with the lessons. And then the blended learning format. Teachers are having to learn to work within the blended learning format, which is a different form, a different medium that we have not really developed extensively. Usually it's within a confined space where you are in that space, but now we're having to learn to exchange ideas through type and through text, and you lose all facts in text, and it's a huge challenge that we have to overcome. But learning how to communicate in a different way. So the blended format that I see that we're working towards or pushing towards or we're using right now is a combination of video conferencing through Zoom or what have you, whatever the school system is using. Zoom, where you see the teacher may not see you, but you see the teacher, and you're able to exchange conversation that way. And then you also have online assignments. That's another format, combining in that way. Then you go and watch videos to get instruction. So these are all different tools that they're using, electronic tools that they're using, but you're losing that piece that is so, that component that's so important to teaching, which is that relationship. You're going to have to build it a different way. So now you're causing teachers to find a way to meet that need, to build that portion in a different way. So there is a huge, and then of course, if you have students who don't have the technology, that makes it even more of a challenge.
Yes.
So we have got to, I don't know how, but I know here in Huntsville, we've gone to that blended learning format, and it seems to be working. It's only been in effect for about a week now, and it seems to be working. But here again now, as a parent, I'm working from home, but I'm also trying to teach at the same time. It does not work well. It does not work well when the parent, who is not the teacher, is now tasked with making sure your child is sitting in front of that computer during this instructional period while you're also trying to work. Now that's the challenge for the parents, because it's now you're the disciplinarian.
Yep. Exactly.
So it's a different structure, and we're getting used to it, ironing out the kinks to it, but definitely it is a challenge, and we're up to the task because we have to. And whenever we come to a place like this, we're going to make it, but we just have to figure out the best way to do it. So that's going to take time. Absolutely.
And at this point in the game right now, you really have no choice. You have to figure out a way to make this thing work and effectively make it work. Bishop, what's on your heart?
Okay.
Bishop? I'm having to unmute this thing. Well, she's getting a lot of information. Wonderful questions are being asked and comments being made. I had to laugh at Leonard because it was so funny. Said, like, you want to make $100,000, don't be a school teacher. And that is so true.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't delineate the fact that we think they need to make more money than they make. The same thing with police officers. And when I was a police officer, I used to tell them, hey man, this is what we signed up for. This is the contract. Let's do our job. You say you want to protect and serve. You didn't say you want to get millions of dollars protecting and serve. If that's the case, then you need to go work for us. But I do want to commend the doctor and again, everyone that works in that field, because you have to have a lot of patience and you have to tolerate a lot of things. And one of the sad things about it, even, when the children were in school, I think a lot of parents would send the children to school. The law requires this, but they look at it as a way to get them out of the house. And they're stay-at-home moms and dads, where they got to go to school.
Exactly.
And then the teachers are the first individuals that see the harm that the children are going through. And they have to empathize with that. Yet at the same time, they have to report it. So there's a whole lot that goes on behind being a teacher, a counselor, a vice principal, or key administrator. So all I can say is just thank you so much, doctor. And thank everyone that really has the heart and passion and trying to help educate our children to a better and a brighter future.
Exactly. It's we actually ready to get out of here. I think Sherry has something on her. I'm gonna go to Sherry real quickly because we got to get out of here. We getting out of here at 9 o'clock today.
Okay, then what? It's a very important question. Okay, I was just remembering the issue where teachers were being stressed out, the paperwork. And I was just thinking, maybe we can restructure this where we have like a certain amount of people who basically work with the teacher, or a group of teachers, and they can interact with them and get the paperwork together, and they will process the paperwork and get it ready for the principal so they can take it to wherever they have for the state and everything, because so they can be able to teach. They're doing some more paperwork than they're actually teaching the kids. And I've seen it with my own eyes. They'll get up for maybe 10, 20 minutes to teach the kids, and they're having a mountain of paperwork they have to do. And during planning time, when they should be making the lesson plans, they're doing paperwork, playing catch up, and then they go home and doing paperwork. So that's a big issue that I see. And I know a teacher that went to Abu Dhabi to teach overseas because she didn't have to deal with just the paperwork and all the stress of teaching in the States.
Doctor, what do you say to that?
Well, the paperwork, I guess I know it's a challenge, but it's another thing that you have to get used to, a part of being the job. But here's the thing, here's the challenge. You can create a lesson. You could establish a lesson in advance, but you have to understand that's a living lesson. And just like that classroom is a living classroom, I can create a lesson. No, rarely do I go, does it meet that? Does it meet that lesson? So I'm modifying as I go along, if I'm teaching correctly. I'm modifying as I go along to adjust for the learning. So I'm making note. How is this learning? How is this teaching style working? And then as I go through the lesson, I'm going to go back and modify my lesson, which creates more paperwork because I'm creating documentation. Now, look, that does not include any type of distractions, any kind of challenges that we hit, within the context of supplies and materials. Oh, and it doesn't include the challenges that you get when you have outside influences into the classroom. So then you have to take all that into account. So if you're talking about lessons and creating lessons and modifying lessons, that is the part of the job. That is a part of the job, and it does create stress. But if you, as you go along, if you're passionate about it, then you'll know I've got to do something, because the goal, which is our goal here, is that child learns. That's the goal. So the evidence of teaching is learning. If I'm not getting any learning, that means I just exercised for 90 minutes, or I was just up there I was just doing nothing. It doesn't matter. Whatever you're doing doesn't matter. So the evidence of teaching has to be in that learning. So in the grand scheme of things, yes, paperwork it's a necessary evil, I say. It's required. But, we definitely need to work to scale it back as much as possible. But to focus on teaching and to focus on learning, that should be our main focus, our main priority, because that lesson is living. So that
Absolutely.
living document is being created as we go. You can't create it beforehand. You can create a scale of it, but as the day goes along or as the class goes along, that document is being modified.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, I'm gonna say something, Dr. Spears, you're awesome. Thank you. Definitely appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it.
Awesome sauce.
Now, if anybody wanted to get in contact with you, I don't I wouldn't give a phone number, but if you have an email address or something like that, where people could get in contact with you, or if you don't care about giving your number, you could do that. But I certainly can't try to steer people away from giving their personal number. But how can someone get in contact with you if they have a question after this broadcast?
Deborah.e.spear@gmail.com. That's Deborah, Deborah.e.spear@gmail.com.
Good deal. Good deal. It's been a great broadcast. I want to thank everybody. And more than that, I want to thank everybody for allowing DKM Radio and the Morning Glow to be a part of your morning. Leonard, what's going on at 3 o'clock today? Let me unmute you here. Hold on 1 second, Leonard. Let me unmute. There you go.
If you do not get a chance to hear this show in its entirety, log on to www.dkmradio.com.
Good deal. Good deal. Now, let me see who we have here. Donald. Donald,
Yes,
can I get you to pray us out, sir?
yeah.
All right.
God, Father, we come and we give you glory and honor, praise you. This is who you are. Now, God, this become this first topic we talked about. We ask that you bless all educators. Then, God, bless those families that have become educators. God, we ask you to give the students' minds design. And then, God, we ask that you bless those that have special needs. That those kids in mind that we have that can will not pass without tutoring. God, we submit it all to you and say, God, you bless. You wave your hand. You will educate, give them wisdom, knowledge, and understanding so they be productive. Bless you now in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. It's been it's been a great broadcast. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, more than that, I want to thank you for allowing DKM Radio and the Morning Glow to be a part of your morning. We're going to end as we begin with the song. Let me see what we want to play this morning. See what we're going to play out with this morning. I should have had this ready already, but I don't. But let me see. Mary, Don't You Weep. Yeah, we're going to play some Mary, Don't You Weep. This is Trinity 5-7. Trinity 5-7. The name of the song is Mary, Don't You Weep. It is now 9:08. 9:08. You're about to exit the Morning Glow. But before you go, I want you to do me two favors, if you will. One, I want you to continue to pray for us because we're certainly praying for each and every one of you. Number two, why this is real simple. I want you to go out there, find somebody, and give them a hug because you never know. It could be the only hug that they get, or it could very well be their last. Love you, and ain't nothing you can do about it. Have a great day and a better tomorrow. And we shine some of this light from the Morning Glow on you. Take this light out into this wicked and cruel world that we live in, and let your light so shine. Y'all have a great day. Love you, and love one another. This is Trinity 5-7. I'm sorry, Trinity 5-7. The name of the song is Mary, Don't You Weep.